Talk to me a little about the Diamondbacks with this trade deadline coming up.
Todd, from what I'm hearing, they are set up to sell. They're clearly the team to watch here these next 2 weeks. And just think of how the planets are lining up. They have the perfect excuse to sell, don't they? They can just stand there and say, we loved our team. We couldn't stay healthy. We're in a tough division. So we're going to trade these guys and then try to sign them all again as free agents. And I honestly think that's what's going to happen. So I don't know. Isn't there a world where Eugenio and Josh Naylor become the two best bats traded? I think so. And I don't know that they deal both Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen, but I mean, what are the odds that whichever one of those two they do sign becomes the best starting pitcher traded? I think they're really high. That's a team that I think now controls the deadline. They're perfectly positioned and they know it.
But is this team, they're not looking to rebuild. They're not even looking to really necessarily build their farm system. So this might be my favorite team because they could make a baseball trade where they're like, hey, we'll take your already established big leaguer with 1 year of time for our rental that we have. Is there a team that they match up the best in that type of trade?
I think they match up with about 10 teams. They've got the walk year all-stars. So the value of rental players has been falling in this market, but for them to get one young piece of the puzzle, I mean, that fits infinite number of teams. I don't know how many teams that are in a race want to trade a player who's actually on their big league roster right now, but they're going to do fine, I think. And, what you just described, a team looking to make trades that are good baseball trades that set them up to compete again next year, that describes the Diamondbacks perfectly for me.
Hey, Jason, I want to ask you about the trade deadline in general. Your colleague at The Athletic and our buddy on this show, Jim Bowden, recently put out an article saying that he thinks the trade deadline should be pushed back a bit after years now of a case study with the third wildcard team added and more teams with a decent percentage of making the playoffs. Are you okay with where we're at, or do you feel like we're hurting ourselves as a game by preventing trades from happening because too many teams are still on the fence, and it would give them a little bit more time after the draft to collect thoughts, right? Because it seems like generally most teams are not doing much until after the draft, which is 3 days ago.
Yeah. Scott, both those things are true. And I agree with Jim to that point. But I think there comes a time when teams need to make a decision about what they are. And I think teams can waffle until August 15th just as easily as they can waffle till July 31st. And when I look at these teams that can't decide, I just think you should understand after 110 games or whatever it is, what your team is and what your odds are and what you should do for now and for down the road. And I just think it's an excuse. I don't know how much it clarifies anything to wait until August 15th. I do think it's an issue that teams that have some big injury after July 31st have no vehicle to make a trade that gets them a replacement. I would like the sport to think about that, but otherwise, I like it where it is.
I couldn't agree more. I got traded plenty of times on August 30th. I'm not a big playoff contributor, but I still think teams need to have that out where they get that August 30th deadline back again because big guys get moved. Justin Verlander gets moved during that time.
Yeah, the Justin Verlander trade is one of the biggest, most difference-making deals of the last 10 years. And it happened not in July, but in August. And just all the anecdotes about what happened that night with the Astros people waiting in a car outside his house, right? And him running down the stairs so he could sign and approve the deal right before midnight. Tremendous. Give me as many tales like that as we can put together.
I don't know, all those stories. I like reading all those stories, but they don't all line up. Like for me, like they got the call in by 11:59, and supposedly he still signed it. Anyway, we don't need to make up stories to be friends, Jason. But I do have to ask you about the Phillies. Dave Dombrowski is like, he is waiting with his hand on the button to trade for somebody. How big of a move or moves is Dave Dombrowski looking to make right now, all the way up until a trade deadline?
Yeah, Eric, I think he has this sense about his team that with the right move or moves, they can win the World Series, that everybody else is beatable, their team too, but they have that team that nobody wants to play because of their pitching, right? And I ran into a guy in Atlanta who has talked to Dave, and he said he thinks Dave is geared up to do something huge. He's got his prospect chips ready to go. And look, his ideal trade is not going to happen. His ideal trade is the Twins for Byron Buxton and Johan Duran. That's not going to happen. The Twins aren't going to do that. But that's what I think Dave would do in an ideal world. Give up a ton of prospects for a big bat, a huge arm, and two guys he can control beyond this year.
So here was one thing I was coming up with yesterday. Either two options. Either you play the game, and then at the end of the game, you do a derby. And if, let's say, the AL was winning 6-2, each team gets 3 swings. The AL has a 4-run lead, so they get 4 bonus swings. Or mid-game, you do a derby, and that can lead to an extra run with a 3-swing swing off. It's an exhibition game.
Yeah.
Okay, we debated a lot yesterday, Jason, about if we would ever see it in a regular season game, maybe from the 12th inning on. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that messing with the All-Star game is too much, or it's okay because it's an exhibition?
Okay, let's do this one thing at a time. First off, I love this. It was so much fun. Every once in a while, given the stuff I write about all the time, when something like this breaks out, I almost feel like I somehow willed it to happen. You know what I mean? Just so I could write about it. It was so entertaining, and the way the crowd got into it and those players got into it, it was awesome for the All-Star game. I am not a proponent of doing this in any other context, but one thing I couldn't help but think about was all the powers that be in the sport were in the park watching that and seeing how people reacted, hearing the buzz, just watching the reaction to those Kyle Schwarber bombs and thinking they're going to be tempted to do this. I don't know, guys. How do you feel about the idea that the last pitch of a game that counts would be thrown by a coach? I'm not there yet.
Jason, sorry that Scott just wasted your time with what he was saying, because I've tried to stop him. They try to stop me when I say just asinine things, and this is my chance to just stop Scott from constantly talking about this. But no, it's not. We don't want coaches on the field. Like, the game's played for players. It was so awesome. I completely agree with you that it was awesome. But from that game, besides that, what is the storyline that is going to bleed into the second half from the All-Star game? Because obviously everyone's like, oh, Cal Raleigh's going to be so tired because he played in the home run derby and the game and all that stuff. But what do you feel like is going to bleed into the second half as we left the All-Star game in Atlanta?
Something from the game? Because besides that, that's going to be the thing we talk about most, I think. I mean, I've been honestly thinking about, what does this do for Kyle Schwarber's trip to free agency? I think he was going to get paid, even though there's really no precedent, I think, for a contract for a guy who fits his profile. But you saw it. I mean, I talked to players in that National League clubhouse about that guy afterwards, and just hearing Kyle Stowers say, that guy's a legend. And this just made him more of a legend. Does this help Kyle Schwarber's trip through free agency? Because I'm going to vote yes.
ABS challenge was used in the All-Star game. I thought that was pretty cool. You saw guys like Wilson understand his strike zone. You saw Manny Machado actually strike out. Do you think this is a lock for next year?
I do. It really sounds that way. And I've heard you guys talk about it. I've thought about it a lot. I'm Mr. Rule Change. I love using technology to make the sport better, but I'm just not sold that introducing a challenge system without some sort of buffer zone makes sense. I know Rob Manfred shot that down when I asked him that about in the baseball writers meeting the other day. But do you guys want a game decided by a call overturned on a pitch 1/100th of an inch outside? Because I'm not comfortable with that. I'm really not.
You're not comfortable with it. So then shrink the strike zone, and then when it hits the edge, it's a strike. Like, Jason, it's a strike. 1/100th of an inch off is a ball, on is a strike. Now, if you can tell me that it's not that accurate, like the distance for the home runs in the home run derby, like they just made up a number and they wanted Cal Raleigh to move on. But to me, there's no buffer zone. We don't need a buffer zone. The strike zone is what they made it. And if it's too big, make it smaller. But if it hits that smaller strike zone, it is a strike.
Okay, so I think I can tell you that. We know that Major League Baseball acknowledged to the players on the competition committee earlier this year that there is a margin for error with ABS of up to half an inch. And so when you've got that much wiggle room, that much margin for error, how does it not make sense to have some kind of buffer zone? I think there are a lot of different ways to introduce that, but like, I know that you have to draw the line somewhere between what's a ball and what's a strike. I get it. But I just don't want, with 2 outs in the ninth, the pitcher to pop the mitt, the umpire to call strike 3, and then it's challenged, and the game changes based on a call that technologically may or may not be correct. I also wonder about whether the up-down portion of ABS is technologically correct. I know that they've experimented with a lot of different permutations of this, but there's no surefire way to especially gauge height. And so they're doing it by percentage of height. And this, like a guy who is up there in a crouch, his strike zone is not the same as the guy who's upright, but his ABS strike zone is the same. And so look, these are things that I've got to work through in my brain. And, you heard Tony Clark the other day say the union feels like there needs to be a buffer zone. They're going to clash on this, but Rob Manfred, MLB, they hold the cards. So whatever they decide is what's going to happen.
But isn't there gamesmanship in this? Isn't there gamesmanship in the fact that when you go into Texas, the ABS is a little bit wider? Oh, every time we go into Sacramento, because their cameras are at a lower angle. Like, isn't there gamesmanship? Well, why is Jacob Wilson squatting a little bit lower this year? Like, there's a gamesmanship to that don't you think teams will be able to work through? Like, it's not going to be catastrophic, like a Jim Joyce missed out call at first base for a perfect game.
So you're basically saying that pitchers and catchers and even hitters, right, have to adjust to the ABS strike zone in a given city the way that you guys have spent your lives adjusting to umpire strike zones? Is that what you want?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think there's merit in that. Again, here's my problem, Eric. We're talking about the use of technology, and how are you selling it to your fans? You're telling them, don't worry about those egregious calls that humans make, because we've now got robots, and they're going to get this right. But are we sure about that? And if they don't, there are games riding on it. There are postseasons riding on it. There are legacies riding on it. One more thing I can't get out of my head. There are wagers okay, on DraftKings riding on it. So if you're going to use this, doesn't it have to be right? Think about it.
Here's the one thing I feel like we can all agree on right now. It's fun. At the current setup, I think it's fun. 2 challenges, and then you keep them if the ump's wrong. That part, I think, has resonated well in the minor leagues, in spring training, and now from the All-Star game the other day. I didn't hear anybody, and most of my social media browsing saw people be like, oh, that took 10 seconds, and haha, the ump got it wrong on 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5, whatever it was. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, it's fun. Like, I don't know how much fun the umpires think it is. But, yeah, it's fun. And I mean, the wait for the animation to appear on that scoreboard. And then sometimes, like, one of my favorite things in spring training was fans would boo the cartoon. What are they booing?
That's fun, though.
I agree. It's like them always booing the Astros jersey. Like none of the guys except for Jose Altuve were on the team, and they just boo the jersey. So why not boo an animation?
Fans are looking for something to cheer for and looking for something to boo, and this is another.
And
thing
that's
to
engagement.
Add to the arsenal.
That's engagement.
That is engagement. I'm more locked into a game if I can say, "Oh, they should challenge that one. That one's off." Whether I'm at home or at the ballpark.
Ah, summer. We almost forgot what it feels like to play just because. But even summer needs backup. A little partner in the good kind of chaos. Someone to bring the kung fu kicks. Hiya! To train some dragons. Fly, young dragon rider, fly. The kind of fun that keeps the days going. That turns living rooms into playgrounds. And reminds us what our bodies and our hearts were made for. Play that moves you.